think it's 13. 6:15. Let's see what his plan is when he says. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting of the Town of Wolfeboro's Board of Zoning Adjustment to order. My name is Fred Tedeschi. I act as chairman of this group. To my immediate left is Sarah Silk. She's our vice chair. To her left is Luke Freudenberg. He's a member. To my right is Tim Cronin. Tim is our clerk. To his right is Peter Colcord. He's also a member. And to his right is Audrey Klein. Audrey Klein, who's an alternate, and just joining us after having trouble parking. We need to get some reserve parking for our members. Thank you. Is Suzanne Ryan. Will the clerk read the notice of the first meeting?
First case is tax map -147-6, case number 13V19, applicant the Wright Museum, for a variance under Article 13, Section 175-86 of the Wolfeboro Planning and Zoning Ordinance to allow for the use of existing structure to store and maintain the museum's privately owned vehicles. This is not for public use. The property is located at 65 Trotting Track Road. Site visit was held this afternoon with Fred Tedeschi, Tim Cronin, Sarah Silk, Luke Freudenberg, Peter Colcord, and Suzanne Ryan. Appropriate copies were sent to all the different agencies within town along with the abutters.
Thank you. I note initially we have an objection to the notice of the meeting, and the objection indicated that the objector was going to try to reach an amicable resolution of this matter. Would you let us know, Roger, if you have reached an amicable resolution?
We have not been able to.
Okay. Is Roger Murray on behalf of...
That's Roger Murray. I'm here this evening representing Single Rose Enterprises, LLC, and the Wentworth Watershed Association, which is the sole member of Single Rose. And I would like to address my objection.
Yes, please do.
I set forth in my October 3rd email to Matt Sullivan, I'm requesting that this hearing not go forward because of failure to provide adequate notice of the subject matter of the hearing. The public notice and the abutters notice state that the request is for a variance to allow the use of the existing structures to store and maintain the museum's privately owned vehicles. But that is not what my understanding of what the museum is requesting. Rather, it is requesting that any private entity be allowed to use the 33-acre parcel to store and maintain any type and number of vehicles. The only issue is they have to be privately owned. And I think that that is a significant difference from what is stated in the notices. I mean, the Wright Museum, we all know what their vehicles are like. We've seen them in the 4th of July parade. Many people, I'm sure, have been to the museum. So we know what the type of vehicles is, and also it's essentially self-limiting in terms of the number of vehicles and the area to be used. They're simply not going to have some enormous number of vehicles. It also talks about a museum use. But this is really, this application, as I believe it's going to be presented, is not really for a museum use. Rather, it could be for a paving company, a large construction company, a cement company, basically anything that involves the storage and maintenance of privately owned vehicles. And I don't think that that is even at all clear from the notice, and I don't think it was fair to the abutters who might have an interest. I do have an email from Patricia Leipold, who is an abutter, which she sent to Andrea Dudley, one of the association's board members, and that, I think, sums it up. We were not aware that the variance in questions for usage of the entire 33-acre parcel for storage and maintenance of vehicles without limits. Thank you.
Mr. Rhines, you want to speak on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Rhines from White Mountain Survey and Engineering, here representing the Wright Museum and the estate of Everett Albee. And the application is, as we state, that it is, this application is for the Wright Museum, but it's for the storage of privately owned vehicles, not residential. I think to stretch that out to a paving company could come in, or a cement company, or something else that's a business. The Wright Museum is a nonprofit. It is, no public is allowed here. That's clearly stated in the application. And so that I see them as significantly different, and I think that the application was appropriately noticed. If the Wright Museum should ever divest itself of this property, and an individual should buy it, if this variance were granted, it's going to be for privately owned vehicles. It's not going to be for a business, because a private citizen or a private individual is not making money for it. I think businesses, if they were to attempt to use it for commercial purposes, that's different than what this variance has been applied for.
Rebuttal?
I would disagree with that to the extent a cement company is a privately owned entity. And in fact, if I don't see the limitations that Jim is mentioning in this request. I think one thing is clear is that this application is highly unclear. The reason I said what I said about the use was because that's what the museum told us. And when you read this application, it talks about the museum using it for maintenance and storage of its vehicles. It doesn't talk about a business, some other entity, and our concern is not with the museum's use, but if they should decide in the future that it doesn't meet their needs, that it being sold to someone else, and that's really what we're concerned about and needs to be addressed.
And it's your view, Mr. Murray, that if we grant the variance, there is no limitation on the use by a future owner of this property?
If you grant, well, I have an argument against that, which I'll get into later, but I think that that is what they are seeking, and it raises the question of, if you in fact grant a variance, what are you granting?
Thank you. Mr. Rhines?
I think, as I said before, that the application is, I think, quite clear. It is for no public. The museum is a 501c3 entity, and, you know, they have a fiduciary responsibility just as the Lake Wentworth Association does. If someone's going to give them money, they have the expectation that they're going to be good stewards with that money. And if they are given monies to purchase this property, they should know that at some point in the future they could at least sell it. I mean, if it would make the Lake Wentworth Association and Single Rose happy, we could give them a right of first refusal for any future sale that might happen. Because it sounds like they're not concerned about what the museum, but it's the future. And so if it's the future, they'd be willing to do that.
I think what Mr. Murray is saying is that the nature of the variance that we grant does not contain the restrictions to the use of the Wright museums, just solely to the use of the Wright Museum. That if once the variance is given, and I assume I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly, there would be no restriction on a future purchaser's use of that.
I think there would be restrictions in that it would have to be for an individual, it couldn't be for a business based on our application. I think it would have to be privately owned vehicles. The public could not have access. And I don't think commercially, if I were to run a business, that would not be a very successful business.
You look like you'd like to say something, Matt.
I'd like to offer that I do agree with Mr. Murray's interpretation that if this variance is granted, I feel that unless some specific restriction is put in place for a private individual only to store vehicles, I think that the variance is somewhat vague in that sense. Therefore, I think if a private entity in the future were to come in, it would be fully permitted under this variance request as presented for them to store private vehicles there. Certainly with a concrete company or some other business, there may be accessory uses that would not be incorporated as part of the variance as presented tonight. But the storage and maintenance alone of the vehicles, I think, would be incorporated within this approval. That said, I'm not sure that we have a true noticing issue here, but I think that the applicant needs to be comfortable with what is being requested before the board proceeds and accepts the jurisdiction of the application.
And do you feel, you don't have to answer this question if you don't feel comfortable, that if we put the restrictions that are suggested by the objector here into the application and into the granting of the variance, that those would be enforceable?
I think that I need to wait to address that question, but I think the board needs to proceed with addressing whether it accepts jurisdiction. I understand that plays a role in that question, but the board needs to first be very clear from the applicant that what is being presented in the application and the notice that was provided is in fact accurate. Any conditions that are set in the variance subsequent to that, I think, can be litigated as part of the public hearing process.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of our folks here? Suzanne.
I'd just like to note that this application is a joint application, and the owner is the family estate of Mr. Albee. So it's not just the Wright Museum. I think there's the ambiguity in the application on page 6, where they specifically say the use of the existing structure and property to maintain privately owned vehicles. They don't specify. There isn't the clarity that there should be in the public notification. All of this is coming out now during this discussion.
Other questions? I'll close the public hearing for our discussion. Comments? Thoughts? Sarah?
Well, we've had some information relative to the fact that we can err on the side of caution and avoid an appeal issue if we don't feel comfortable that the notice was properly given. And we have a number of people that have written letters objecting, so I think that would lead us to believe there will be a lot of scrutiny on the procedure. And I think that if we have any thought that we aren't comfortable with the notice, that we should go ahead and ask to have it re-noticed rather than put the burden on the town and the taxpayers to go to court and involve lots of lawyers later on. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Other comments? Other discussion? All right. Matt, sorry.
Recommend that you do have some indication from all board members of their favor on accepting jurisdiction before you proceed. It doesn't have to be a formal vote, but I think in the event that the majority of the board feels that it's necessary to have a re-noticed application, I would defer that to you, but I would extend the offer to the applicant to withdraw the application rather than deny without prejudice based on the procedural issue.
All right. Anyone else wish to give their leaning here?
I'm ready to go ahead with the...
Suzanne?
I can't vote, but I would
For this purpose.
urge the board to renotice and/or ask the applicant to withdraw without prejudice his application.
I would ask this gentleman if he's okay with us moving forward, if it's stipulated that if the property is sold, it is not to be used for business use.
We close the
With some
public
sort of
hearing. I
reason.
don't think we can take any more input.
Okay, let's reserve that question. Peter?
I think it should be renoticed.
Audrey? I think it should be. I'll reopen the public hearing just for a moment for you to ask your question. Tim?
If the Watershed Association says we're good to move forward, if there's a stipulation in the variance stating that if the property is sold, it's not to be used for commercial business use, is that something that can be done?
I would recommend against that. I think at that point you're basically arguing the facts of the variance and potentially arguing conditions. I think if the applicant believes that the notice reflects what they're asking for, it would not be appropriate to then begin essentially negotiating with a public individual or an abutter, even withstanding, about what conditions would be on the variance itself.
And I also concur that I think that the notice should have been more specific. Mr. Ryans, what's your thought on this, sir, please? I'll open the public hearing for this purpose.
I guess we would seek some guidance on what kind of language you're looking for. I think we were specific in what we wanted, but if it's not clear enough, you know, we would like to know what it is that everybody wants to hear for a notice to make it suitable.
I would suggest that would be with the town planner to work out the language and maybe the town council.
Okay. We will commit to working.
Fred, do you need a motion?
I don't think we need it. If Mr. Ryans withdraws it, we don't need a motion.
Yeah, if we can get the direction on what the notice should be, we would withdraw this application.
We will commit to getting that direction for you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Tim, would you read the second item for our agenda today?
We're going to give him a couple minutes to get out of here. Quiet. Good. There's a lady in the sweater right there. Is that Lucy Van Cleve? Oh, okay. Looks familiar. Lucy Van Cleve used to work at the Wolfeboro Inn, and then for a while she was working And but she's working as a realtor, but she was involved in the revamping of the motel across from Nick. But is she still there? So she's doing the realty and the, okay.
My mother's working there.
Ah,
Had a good summer.
looked like it. It was such. No, but it. Ah, just from the outside driving back, it looks so much better. It can't help but be wonderful inside.
Given,
Shuffleboard. It's just really good.
okay, I think if you drew that one.
Next case tonight is tax map 204-8, case number 14-SC-19. Applicant is Celebrate BBV LLC. Public hearing for Article 175, Section 43 of the Wolfeboro Planning and Zoning Ordinance to allow for a change in the front facade of a building to a square off the top section and increase the center section height by 4 feet for a total height of 22 feet. This property is located at 8 Elm Street. Site visit was held today at 4:35. Attending was Fred Tedeschi, Sarah Silk, Luke Freudenberg, Tim Cronin, and Peter Colcord.
Thank you. Who speaks for the applicant, please? Our process is you introduce yourself, you present your case, you can read the application, and then we'll ask if I'll allow anyone who has an opposition to it to speak. And then if there is opposition, you have an opportunity to answer the opposition, and they'll have an opportunity to answer your answer.
Okay. My name's Kirk Gilmore. I am the one of the members of Celebrate BBV LLC, the owner of 8 Elm Street. This building is approximately 2,500 square feet, erected in 1970, serving as a combination model railroad and attraction and hobby shop for the last 40 years. With the building having been a retail location for the past 39 to 40 years, there will be no change in the effect of the neighborhood or abutting properties. Traffic will remain gradually the same, generally the same. There will be no additional noise, dust, glare, smoke fumes, gas or odors generated. Hours of operation would be 10 to 5 p.m. There's no change in the traffic pattern, and there is on-site parking currently available. Since this special exception is solely dealing with the front facade, not the footprint of the property, there is no change to items A through G. There are no changes to parking, traffic, open spaces, fencing, landscaping, signage, or lighting impact. There will be no commercial vehicles visiting the property other than the occasional UPS or FedEx delivery. The abutting roadside property at 16 Elm has been a commercial residential property for the past 80 years. Within the past several years, a light commercial use has been granted to Ohm, located diagonally across the street. If anything, the change to the facade of this building will beautify the appearance, helping to increase the perceived value of the abutting properties. The continued use of the building as a retail location will prevent the property from falling into decay and becoming an eyesore to the community. Furthermore, the change to the front of the facade will add a distinguished look to the current nondescript, low-sitting building.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Sarah.
Yes, we have a couple of pictures here, and I just wanted to reconfirm that this would just be like a flat facade, and the building behind it, the roof line would not change, and there will be no additional space added?
That is correct.
Okay, so it would just have perhaps this little awning on it, the sign at the top, and new windows?
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Matt, this application is showing 2 large signs on the front with the new regulations in town. Does this fit within? what the new regulations are? Okay.
And there's only one sign, the other is an awning that would have printing on the awning.
That's it.
I believe that constitutes a sign when you have lettering on the building for, we've had an incident where people have, say, for example, lettering on a barn, and it's definitely a sign according to the code enforcement officer.
An awning comes and goes. Signs are permanent.
That's not our issue here.
That's also true.
Correct.
Other questions for the applicant?
None.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak against the application? All right, seeing nobody moving to get up to, I'll close the public hearing.
How about in favor?
Let's discuss this amongst ourselves here. Okay, so we've got the 8 criteria. Site suitability, basically the same use as what's been used for a long time. Immediate neighborhood impact, does not appear to be any additional impact based on the change of the front facade. If any,
Actually improves the
it's a positive,
appearance of the neighborhood.
Clean
it's
it
a
up.
positive improvement. Yes, Sarah.
I would think that in this neighborhood, the previous appearance of the building is more like a warehouse, and it has a lot of residents in that building, and by adding windows across that front, plus adding additional windows on the other 2 sides, I think actually makes it fit into the existing buildings in the neighborhood much better.
No undue nuisance or serious hazard to pedestrian or vehicular traffic. As the applicant has represented, there'll be no change in the traffic pattern, and there is adequate on-site parking available. The applicant has also indicated that the public facilities and services, there'd be no real difference here. All they're really asking for is to put a different front on the building and no proposed change of the use. Item 5, the appropriateness of the site plan. There are no changes contemplated to the site as it exists, so there's no issue in that, on that item. Immediate neighborhood integrity. This appears to me that this structure is in a commercial area, or largely commercial area, and that we have previously granted, well, that's not controlling, we've allowed others to continue the commercial use, so it does not appear that this is going to change the use at all.
And it's a reasonable use.
Agreed. On the impact on property values, the testimony has been that it should improve the value and the appearance of the building, which should help improve the appearance of the neighborhood. And then finally, the proposed use of structure is consistent with the spirit of the ordinance and the intent of the master plan, and there's be no change in the use that would have any impact on the master plan. Anyone wish to add any of their own comments to that? Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve the special exception request.
Would that be including the comments from the town planner?
Yes.
Conditions?
Yes.
In that case, I will second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Sorry?
I did.
Fred.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the members, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The variance is granted. Your special exception is granted. Thank you very much. Will the clerk read the next item, please?
Next case is tax map number 17-19, case number 15-V-19, application Mark Wheaton. Public hearing for a variance under the Article 175-80, Section 80A:2 of the Wolfeboro Planning and Zoning Ordinance to allow for the construction of a garage adjacent to an existing structure. Property is located at 102 East, Old Key Waden Point Road. Site visit was held today with Fred Tedeschi, Tim Cronin, Sarah Silk, Luke Freudenberg, Peter Corcoran, God, I got that wrong again, and Suzanne Ryan.
Thank you.
Colcord. Sorry about that.
I'm not going to comment. Who appears for the applicant? Would you please identify yourself and present your case?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jessica Stockman. I'm the designer with Stockman Builders, LLC, based in Tuftonboro, New Hampshire.
Could you pull the microphone a little closer, please?
Sorry.
Thanks.
And I'm here representing Mark and Darla Wheaton, who've been part-time residents of the area for 60 years. And they seek
Since
to...
before you were born? I said before, since before you were born.
Darla for 30 years. Mark for 60.
Sorry. Sorry for interrupting your...
That's quite all right. Yes, we'd like to construct a garage on the southwestern side of their property, which is the non-lake facing side, which would infringe upon the 25-foot zoning setback on their property by approximately, we believe the garage would be up against their property line up to about 8 feet. 7 feet, including the 1-foot roof overhang.
Okay.
So the garage will be approximately 1,008 square feet and will come within approximately 8 feet of their property line, which abuts conservation land belonging to the Keewaydin Point Association. Permission to build within the 25-foot side yard setback has already been granted by the association in writing. Of the 1,008 square feet of the garage, approximately 555 square feet will reside within the zoning setback of 25 feet. They may also be a 69.7 square foot part of the garage, roof included, which would reside within the rear 25-foot setback, abutting the parcel to the rear of the lot, which belongs to Michael and Janet Rogers of Topsfield, Mass.
And just for the record, how much of a intrusion into the setback would that be?
Less than 70 square feet.
I mean, in terms of distance from the closest point to the setback
It
line?
would be, I think it's within 4 feet.
4 feet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have an original copy of the survey with you?
I do not. The original survey was a 1967 subdivision. All I've had to go by to get the lot dimensions is from the tax map online.
And then, would you go through the conditions that's in your application there?
Yes.
Tell us why, for the record, this is being recorded.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
if somebody wants to view it later, we need to go through all of the things. And you can
Okay.
just read.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, sure. Right, so point number one is that the variance will not be contrary to the public interest because the addition of a garage will not alter the character of the neighborhood, given that several other homes currently have garages. I would also add that the garage would not be in anybody's visual path, any abutter, it would not obstruct any view, etc., being on the back portion of their property. Number two, the spirit of the ordinance is observed because we are not constructing additional living space, merely storage for vehicles and other paraphernalia. The addition of a garage to the property does not substantially draw on public resources, such as the town's public water system. Number three, substantial justice is done because the lot adjacent to the house has a deed restricting development. Therefore, we are not, nor will we, impact a neighbor by building within the 20 feet setback of the zoning setback. 4, the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished because the addition of a garage should improve the value of the property, thereby improving all values in the neighborhood. And point 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship because in order to provide covered access between the house and the garage, the current location of the house requires the garage to be within that 25-foot setback of the lot line, and the lot along the shared lot line cannot be developed.
Yes, Matt, sorry.
Sure.
For clarification purposes, the setback in the R zone is a 20-foot setback. It is not a 25-foot setback. Therefore, the encroachment proposed, I would just make a few modifications for the record. It's a total encroachment of 11 feet 8 inches, and that therefore is 6 feet 8 inches, and therefore 13 foot 8 inches, or 4 inches from the property line. So when we get to my conditions, I'll walk through those and just confirm them, but just to confirm, it is a 20-foot side setback, not a 25-foot. I'd also recommend a condition of approval be amendment of the plan to actually be put into the file, should the approval be granted.
Matt, does that cover the overhang on the building also?
I believe it does. I asked for clarification, but I believe the dimensions on the plan do reflect the overhang.
Yes.
Thank you. And then the final one. Special conditions.
Is that use A or B? Oh, yep. Part A, owing to the special conditions of the property set forth above, that distinguishes it from other properties in the area. No fair and substantial relationship exists between the purposes of the ordinance applicable to the application and the specific application of that provision to the property, because we will not be infringing on the rights of a potential homeowner adjacent to our house by building this garage. And Part 2, the proposed use is a reasonable one because a garage adjacent to the house allows for safe passage between the garage and the house during the winter months.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else here, so I assume there's no opposition. Questions for the applicant? Sarah.
Yes. We had a little picture here, and I actually had a better picture on an email that Matt sent to us. And just for clarification, there was a little walkway and then a little storage cubby, I guess?
Sure.
And you had said that the storage cubby will go away.
Yeah.
And it appears as if the cover that goes over that little porch and goes over to the garage is only a roof, correct?
Correct.
So
it's an open breezeway
it is
from
an
the
open
garage
breezeway.
right to
Okay.
the home. Yeah, but it'll be covered, so it'll keep.
The snow off.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have a drawing, and it's not a very, very good copy, but it appears as if the lot goes across the road, comes up, and then dives in the middle,
Yes.
which greatly restricts where you can put anything and gives you lots of setbacks, not just from the street, but from this side, the inside of the cleavage on both sides, and the other side.
Correct.
That's wonderful.
I showed this drawing just to show how restrictive
Yes.
the lot is in terms of any sort of additional buildings.
I just wanted to make certain that I had that right.
Thank you.
And you're pulling the garage back so that it's more in line with the front of the house rather
Correct.
than sticking up further. Okay. Other comments or questions? The applicant? No?
We're all math challenged, Matt. We didn't.
So let's review the bidding here once again.
We're not going to change it, right?
Side yard setback. and your rear setback is okay.
And the front setback is okay. All righty.
Side only, okay. All right, any further questions? I'll close the public hearing. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Someone wishes to make one? Okay, that's a good idea. Let's go through the criteria quickly. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest. From my visual overview of the area, it seems as there are quite a few other homes that have garages, that the garages are somewhat set back, and that this proposal here conforms to the neighborhood style, and that the garages are set back, and that the garage is no different or no larger than other garages that are on their properties. Anyone wish to add anything? And two, I think the spirit of the ordinance is observed, because I do agree that it does not draw any further on public resources. It's a good attempt to put an additional convenience for the homeowners on their lot in a way that's sensitive to the community, and that the representation was that the neighboring lot cannot be built upon, so the encroachment there does not harm anyone else in the neighborhood. Sarah?
And I think they're also sensitive to the neighborhood in that this breezeway is roof only and you can see right through it.
Okay. Any other comments on two? On the third, substantial justice is done. I don't see any adverse impact to neighbors by building within the setback requirements. There's no adverse impact on the adjoining lot because of the deed restriction. I think that there's no reason here to deny the variance because of impact to others. All right, any other comments? Number four, I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Number four, the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished. Generally, we would require for this finding to find testimony from someone else that in fact those values would be diminished. There being no testimony to that effect, and looking at the proposed plans and the way the building addition is set up, it appears to me to be well within the way the neighborhood is constructed, and will be an improvement, if anything. Although we do like the design of the structure you're going to be removing. 5, literal enforcement of the provision of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Sarah, you want to take this one?
Yeah, although it wasn't mentioned in here, I definitely think that odd configuration of the lot has a special condition. I was surprised to see how many nooks and crannies that thing had. And I think they're doing well to keep as far away from the line as they are and still be able to have it anywhere near the house.
Any other comments? And then finally, there's no fair and substantial relationship exists between the purpose of the ordinance and the specific application of that provision to the property. We do agree that there'd be no infringement on the rights of potential homeowners adjacent to the home, and that all I see here is good things for the owners of the property. Anyone wish to add anything more? No? I'll entertain a motion to approve the variance.
And that would include Matt's number 10.
Including the planner's recommendations.
I'll second that.
And the one that he just asked about, an amended plan to be added to this, would be like,
Okay. Any further discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, you have a variance.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Could I just add one thing?
Yes, sir.
Today, October 7th, is my wife's and my 30th anniversary, and you've given us the best present of all.
I'm sure that in over those 30 years, there have been many presents that are better than and more well-remembered than our saying, go ahead and build your garage.
Thank you.
But thank you for your sentiment and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
We're sorry you had to spend it with us.
Hey, it's my birthday. I mean, I'm spending it with you too.
So Matt, where's the cake?
And the carport is still available.
Put it on eBay. You might get somebody to take it.
I already asked my husband.
You're welcome. Okay. Yes, we have some minutes to look at.
Fred, I was excused for that meeting, and it's not referenced up here.
We have you as a
Absent.
excused. Absent.
You're all excused.
So it should be members and alternates absent. Anything else on page 1?
Yes.
Yes.
Call to order. There's multiple odd declines, apparently.
Good night, folks.
My name started out as Time. Time.
Anything else on page 1? Page 2.
Yes.
Sarah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down where it says 10-foot closet. I think it should be closer to building, perhaps? Closest.
Closest.
Yes, that makes sense, I do.
And I thought we also got confirmation that the addition she's asking for is in fact 16 by 15. The L shape has, the addition has a bite out of it.
Yes, the ultimate approval was for the full 50.
Yeah. Less than that. I note in the third paragraph, the second line, it says this should be clarified for the record. I don't know that we want to put that in the minutes.
It was clarified.
Yes. Anything else on page 2? Page 3.
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs up from the bottom. Sarah Silk stated she disagrees if a roof is placed over the stairs, it is part of the expansion. And I said that because there is a roof over the ADA entrance and the second floor exit is enclosed. That was my reason for concern.
You want to give some words to add?
I would, out of the expansion, and is concerned the measurements of the stairs will exceed the 16 feet. Well, I guess it should go in after it is part of the expansion, because the roof over the ADA entrance, there is a roof over the ADA entrance, and the second floor exit is totally enclosed. That ADA entrance not only has the roof, but it has like a half wall. It's not totally enclosed. It has like about 3 feet up, like a half a wall, all the way down there. And that's what I was concerned about, because the other exits had some type of enclosure that made them permanent walls, or at least a partial permanent wall. That was why I brought it up.
So your disagreement is that a roof will be placed over the stairs?
Right, and my concern was because there's a roof over the, and a partial wall on the ADA entrance, and the second floor exit is totally enclosed. So maybe it needs to be a separate sentence in there after that sentence, but however it could be included.
Okay. Anything else on page 3? Page 4?
First line, it says coming off are and an additional encroachment. I think it should just be and, no D. And down at the vote, I didn't vote in opposition, I abstained.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Any other comments? Okay. I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Moved.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.
I have a question. Reading the minutes, can we talk about them now that you've voted to, you did vote to accept them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was for a special exception for an expansion to the building,
Of a non-conforming use.
non-conforming use. Matt Sullivan stated there is a difference between covering and enclosing the stairway, which are very different. The ZBA is dealing with the use expansion. Probably dealing with a building expansion, not a use. That's two different things. But they didn't ask for a use expansion. They asked for a building expansion.
But it was made under the use expansion. So it is an expansion of a non-conforming use.
All right. I think the minutes leave something to be desired there, I guess.
I think the difference is you can expand a non-conforming use by adding to the building. The building could be added to without, so long as the non-conforming use was not going to be expanded. Because there was plenty of land there. She could add an extension, but she couldn't add the extension for the purpose of expanding her business.
They're expanding the building so they expand their use.
Yeah.
Right, well, I don't know.
I know it's sort of like a chicken and the
What's
egg.
interesting is reading this, it didn't make sense to me. So, but that's okay. It's done, it's approved.
Anything else?
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
I would love a motion to this.
Well, give it to you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.
Matt, by the way,